You're scrolling through Instagram and you see someone you went to high school with. They've got the nice car in the driveway, the designer clothes, the vacation photos from somewhere tropical, the house that looks like it's from a magazine, and something happens in your brain. A little voice says, "I want that too." So you start thinking about it. You start seeing yourself in that car. You start imagining what people would think if you pulled up somewhere in that. You imagine the respect, the status, the sense of having made it. And honestly, it feels good. It feels possible. You're making decent money now. Why not? So you start the process. You upgrade your car, or your clothes, or your apartment. You get the nice things. You take the nice photos. You post them. And for a moment, you feel it. You feel rich. You feel successful. You feel like you've arrived. But then the credit card bill comes, and the feeling evaporates. I spend way too much time thinking about money and the psychology behind it, why people make the decisions they do, how self-image drives financial behavior, and why the people who look richest are often the most financially fragile. And I've noticed something that's absolutely devastating to your wealth, and most people don't even realize it's happening. It's the gap between looking rich and being rich, and that gap is costing you everything. The crazy part is that these are almost opposite goals. Looking rich requires spending money in ways that prevent you from becoming rich. It's a trap, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. But the good news is that once you understand how it works, you can actually get out of it. Let me tell you something that's probably going to sound weird, but I want you to think about it. The richest people you know, the people who actually have substantial wealth, who have options, who have freedom, they probably don't look that rich. I'm talking about the person who drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic but owns multiple properties. The person wearing the basic wardrobe from Target but has millions in the bank. The person eating at regular restaurants but financially independent. The person in the modest house but completely debt-free. These people exist. They're everywhere, but they're not on Instagram. They're not performing wealth. They're building it. Meanwhile, the people who look rich, the ones with the status symbols, the designer bags, the luxury cars, the amazing vacation photos, they're often one unexpected expense away from financial disaster. They're stressed about money, even though they look like they shouldn't be. They're working jobs they don't like because they have to maintain the image. They're trapped by the lifestyle they've built. Here's the thing that gets to me about this. We see the visual representation of wealth and we think it's the real thing, but it's not. It's performance. It's a costume. And the more convincing the costume, the more broke the person usually is. Because here's the economics of it. If you're going to look rich, you have to spend money on looking rich. New clothes, nice car, expensive phone, fancy dinners, luxury experiences, branded everything. And all of that costs money that could be going toward actual wealth building, savings, investments, assets that appreciate, things that actually make you rich. But those things aren't visible. You can't take a photo of your index funds and post it on social media. You can't get compliments from people at a party for your diversified portfolio. So what happens is you spend money on things people can see, and you forego the things that actually build wealth. And the math on this is brutal. If you're spending an extra $1,000 a month on looking rich, on upgrades and status symbols, and maintaining the image, that's $12,000 a year. Over 30 years, that's $360,000. But it's not just $360,000, because that money could have been invested. At 7% return, that's over $1 million you didn't have because you wanted to look rich. Okay, so here's what's really happening under the surface. And I think this is the part that most people don't want to admit to themselves. We compare ourselves to other people, and we compare based on what we can see. We see the car someone else is driving and we think they're doing better than me. I should be doing that well too. We see the clothes someone's wearing and we think they have more money than me. I need to catch up. We see the vacation photos and we think I'm falling behind. But here's the thing that's wild. You're comparing your insides to their outsides. You're comparing your actual financial situation, which includes your debt, your expenses, your stress, to what you can see of their life, which is the curated, best-case version of their life. You don't see the credit card debt. You don't see the fact that they financed that car with a loan they can barely afford. You don't see the anxiety about making the payments. You don't see that the vacation that looked so amazing cost money they didn't have. You just see the result, and your brain says, I want that. And you make decisions based on that incomplete information. The psychologists call this social comparison, and it's one of the most powerful drivers of consumer behavior. We don't buy things because we need them or because they make us happy. We buy them because we think they'll change how other people perceive us. We think they'll close the gap between us and the people we're comparing ourselves to. But here's the thing, the gap isn't real. Or rather, it's not the gap you think it is. You think you're behind because you don't have the visible symbols of wealth. But the person who has those symbols might actually be further behind than you are financially. The richest wealth builder might look poorer than the person in debt up to their eyeballs. And that's confusing when you're using visual markers to determine who's doing well. There's something that happens when you get the thing you've been comparing yourself to. And it's kind of devastating if you're not aware of it. You finally save up and you buy the nice car. And for like maybe a week, you feel great. You feel successful. You feel like you've made it. But then your brain adjusts. The nice car becomes normal. It's just what you have now. The novelty wears off. And then you notice that there's someone with an even nicer car. And the cycle starts again. This is called the hedonic treadmill. Basically, we adapt to our circumstances. We get a raise, we feel happy for a bit, but then we adjust our spending and our happiness goes back to baseline. We buy something nice, we feel excited, but then it becomes normal and we need the next thing. So the looking rich strategy doesn't even work on its own terms. It doesn't make you happier, it doesn't make you feel accomplished, it just creates an endless cycle where you're always chasing the next status symbol, always trying to keep up, always stressed about affording the lifestyle you've created. And the target keeps moving, because the people around you, the people you're comparing yourself to, they're also buying things, they're also upgrading, they're also moving the goalpost. So you're in this arms race where everyone's spending more and more money to maintain their relative status, and no one's actually getting happier. It's like everyone's on a treadmill that keeps getting faster, and everyone's running harder to stay in the same place. And the treadmill company, the people selling the status symbols, they're the only ones actually getting rich. I want to make a distinction that I think is really important. There's visible wealth, and there's actual wealth, and they're almost never the same. Visible wealth is what people see. The watch on your wrist, the clothes you're wearing, the car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the things that signal to other people that you have money. Visible wealth is about perception. It's about being seen as successful. Actual wealth is your net worth, your assets minus your liabilities, your savings account, your investments, your retirement funds, the money you could actually live on if you had to. Actual wealth is what determines your freedom. And here's the thing. The person with maximum visible wealth often has minimum actual wealth because they've spent all their money on visibility. I met a guy once who drove a Mercedes, beautiful car, looked like money, but he was leasing it. He didn't own it. He was essentially renting the appearance of being rich, and what he was really doing was paying for the privilege of other people thinking he was rich. He was broke. He had no savings. He was stressed about money all the time, but he looked rich. Compare that to someone who drives a 10-year-old paid-for Honda, lives in a modest house they own, wears regular clothes, and has $500,000 in the bank. Who's actually rich? Obviously the Honda person, but they don't look rich. So the Mercedes person feels like they're winning, even though financially they're getting destroyed. This is the fundamental misunderstanding that keeps people broke. They think that looking rich is the same as being rich, so they optimize for looking rich. They spend money on visibility, and they never actually build wealth. But if you flip the priority, if you decide that actual wealth matters more than visible wealth, everything changes. You start making different decisions. You start building instead of performing. And here's the interesting part. Once you actually have wealth, the looking rich part takes care of itself naturally. Okay, I want to dig into why we even care about this in the first place. Why do we care what other people think? Why is the perception of being rich so important to us? A lot of it has to do with how our brains evolved. For most of human history, social status was connected to actual survival. The person with higher status got better resources, better mates, better protection. So our brains developed to care deeply about status. We're wired to want to be perceived as high status. But here's what's changed. In the modern world, you can fake status. You can appear high status without actually having the resources that used to come with high status. You can lease the car that looks like you're rich without having the money that rich people have. So we end up in this situation where we're chasing a perception instead of the actual thing. We're satisfying an evolutionary instinct, the instinct to be seen as high status, but we're doing it in a way that doesn't actually make us safer or more secure or more successful. It just makes us broke. And what makes this even more insidious is that the people around us are responding to the image. If you show up in a nice car, people treat you differently. They respect you more. They think you're doing well. And that feedback reinforces the behavior. You get rewarded, socially at least, for looking rich. But that social reward is not worth the financial cost. The respect you get from showing up in a luxury car is not worth the fact that you're in debt up to your eyeballs. The admiration people have when they see your vacation photos is not worth the stress of having spent money you didn't have. What's wild is that if you could just flip it, if you could get the same social approval for being financially responsible instead of being visibly wealthy, people would change their behavior immediately. The same brain that's attracted to status would be attracted to the status of being financially independent, debt-free, and wealthy. But the culture we've built doesn't award status for that. The culture awards status for looking rich right now, regardless of the cost. Let me walk you through the actual cost of trying to look rich, because when you add it all up, it's staggering. Let's say you decide you want to look successful, so you buy a car that costs $40,000. Even if you pay cash, which most people don't, that's money you could have invested. But let's say you finance it. You get a loan at reasonable interest rates, and your payment is $600 a month. That's $7,200 a year. For 5 years, that's $36,000 total, which is already more than the car is worth. But you need to look the part, so you upgrade your wardrobe. You buy designer clothes, nice shoes, the whole thing. You're spending maybe $150 a month more than you would otherwise on clothes. That's $1,800 a year. You need a nice phone. That's an extra $1,000 a year in phone payments and upgrades. You go out to nicer restaurants more often because you want to be seen in the right places. That's maybe $300 more per month, so $3,600 a year. You take a nice vacation once a year so you have photos to post, an extra few thousand. All in, you're spending maybe $800 to $1,000 more a month to look rich than you would if you just wore regular clothes, drove a reliable car, and lived a normal life. That's $10,000 to $12,000 a year. Over 30 years at 7% return, that's nearly $4 million. $4 million. That's the cost of looking rich instead of being rich. Here's what happens when you actually flip the script. when you decide that you care more about actual wealth than visible wealth. You stop spending money on status symbols. You wear clothes that are comfortable and last a long time. You drive a reliable car that's paid off. You live in a home you can actually afford without stress. You eat out sometimes, but you cook at home mostly. You save aggressively. And at first, you feel poorer. You feel like you're falling behind. You see other people with nicer things, and you feel the urge to catch up. That's the social comparison brain acting up. But here's what's actually happening. You're building wealth. You're getting richer every month. You're putting money in savings, in investments, in assets that appreciate. Your net worth is increasing, while your visible status might be decreasing. And then something shifts. Maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 5 years. But at some point, you hit a number. You have enough in savings that you don't have to worry about an unexpected expense. You have enough invested that you could live on the returns. You have options. You have freedom. And that freedom, not the visible status, but the actual freedom to make choices, to take risks, to say no to things you don't want to do, that freedom is worth more than all the luxury items in the world. And here's the thing that's interesting. Once you have actual wealth, you don't care as much about looking rich because you don't need the validation. You don't need other people to think you're successful. You know you're successful. You can feel it in the freedom you have. So the irony is that the people who try hardest to look rich are often the people who feel most insecure about their wealth, and the people who are actually rich often don't care much about looking the part. I want to give you permission for something. Permission to be invisible. To not be the person with the nicest car. To not be the person with the designer wardrobe. To not be the person taking the most luxurious vacations. To not be the person living in the biggest house in your friend group. To just be a regular person with regular stuff. Because here's what I've realized. The people who judge you for not having the status symbols are people whose opinions you probably shouldn't value anyway. They're the people caught in the same trap you're trying to escape. They're still playing the game. And if you let their judgment influence your financial decisions, you're going to end up just like them. But the people who actually matter, the people who love you, the people who respect you, the people worth knowing, they don't care what car you drive or what clothes you wear. They care about who you are. And if anything, they're probably going to respect you more for being financially responsible than for having nice things. So give yourself permission. Permission to be boring. Permission to be invisible. To drive the reliable car, wear the regular clothes, and save aggressively for the life you actually want to build. Because that visibility you're chasing, that status that you think will make you feel successful, it's not going to satisfy you. But actual financial security, actual freedom, actual wealth, that will. And the only way to get there is to stop spending money on the appearance of wealth. So here's what I want you to take from this. The gap between looking rich and being rich is the gap between performing and building. And most people spend their entire lives performing when they could be building. They optimize for what other people think instead of for what actually makes them secure and free. They spend money on visibility instead of on assets. They chase status symbols instead of actual status. And they end up with nothing to show for it except a bunch of nice things they can barely afford and the constant stress of maintaining the image. But you don't have to do that. You can step off the treadmill. You can decide that actual wealth matters more than visible wealth. You can start spending money on things that matter, your future, your security, your freedom, instead on things that just look good on social media. And I know that's hard. I know there's social pressure. I know people are going to judge you for not upgrading your car or your wardrobe or your house. I know you're going to feel the urge to keep up, to catch up, to prove that you're doing well too. But here's the thing. Every time you resist that urge, every time you choose the used car over the luxury car, every time you wear regular clothes instead of designer clothes, every time you skip the expensive dinner, you're making a choice. You're choosing freedom over status. You're choosing actual wealth over the appearance of wealth. And that choice, compounded over time, is the difference between being stuck in the rat race forever and actually building something that matters. So make the choice. Make it today. Decide that actual wealth matters more than looking rich. Decide that your actual financial security matters more than other people's perceptions. Decide to be invisible if that's what it takes to become actually wealthy. Because once you do, once you flip that switch, everything changes. Distress goes away. The options open up. The freedom becomes real. And that, I promise you, is worth more than any car or any house or any status symbol you could buy. Thank you for thinking through this with me. If this resonated, please share it with someone who's caught in this trap. And let me know in the comments, what's the one status symbol you're going to let go of to build actual wealth instead? Thanks for watching.